Hello, hello, BGU students. Kenny Ortiz here. In this video, I want to give you some insights on how to write a thesis-style research paper. I'm going to be talking specifically about the gender and sexuality class that I'm teaching right now, spring of 2020. But for those of you watching this video after the fact, hopefully this could be helpful to you no matter what class this is for. So thesis-style research papers are the most common or most widely utilized style of research papers in the world of scholarship. And so as you progress through your college education, and then even more so when you go into the graduate level, and when you go up to, when you're doing more scholarly work, you're writing papers, you're always going to be asked to have some sort of thesis. So the idea is that you're researching a topic, and you don't necessarily have to have an opinion or a thesis before you start studying. So you're studying, you're reading about a topic, you're getting various opinions, and then at some point you notice something that you think is interesting, and as you're researching it, you come to an opinion, or you come to a conclusion. You go, ooh, this is a conclusion that I've come to, and I think this statement is true. Boom. Then you say, okay, I am now going to make that the primary point of my research paper. Basically saying this opinion that I now have is the statement, and then my research paper is showing all the research that shows why the opinion that I have is a really good opinion that other people should also have. That's basically what you're doing. So you are trying to persuade. You're not being a salesman. You're not being directly persuasive per se. You're not directly arguing against or contending against per se, but you're simply putting forth a thesis statement, an opinion or conclusion you've come to, and then you're researching that thing and you're presenting the evidence in such a way that someone read it and go, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I want to embrace your opinion now as well. That's basically so some people may call that an argumentative essay. It's really more argumentative light. So it's not, it shouldn't be combative, or the main focus should not be to contend against something, but more to present a particular ideal. So that's important. So for those of you taking my gender and sexuality class specifically, I'm going to pop up here on the screen this syllabus from the class. All right, so you should see that on the screen there, and you'll see. So this is the syllabus from our class. Right, you see here this research paper worth 30% of your grade. So if you don't do well in the research paper, you are not going to do well in this class. All right, you will. For most people, most of you don't have enough grades. Some of you have just done fantastic on all the grades. Even if you bomb the research paper, you'll be fine. But for most of you, your grades are going to be, right at the point where if you bomb the research paper, it's likely you could fail the class. But for most of you, if you do well in the research paper, it'll catapult you to at least a B, maybe even an A in the class. That's where most of you are right now, at about the halfway point of the class. So for most of you, you need this to pass. And for most of you, if you do well, it means getting a B or higher. So that's exciting. So here's what you want to do. This research paper is 1,500 to 2,000 words. If you are under the 1,500, we're going to get a 0, or we're going to just knock off tons of points. 1,500 should not include any footnotes if you have any. You're not required to use footnotes, but if you did have footnotes, it should not require a title. Your title page is required, but you should not include those words and the words of your bibliography. Okay, so just a number of words in the actual body of your paper. Okay, should be at least 1,500 words, and it really should not go above 2,000. But if you go above 2,000, I'm not going to penalize you too much. We will penalize you a little bit, but not a bunch. Basically, when you go over 2,000, here's the question I'm going to ask myself. Was this person's paper so well written and so well researched? Were they communicating it so well, and they were really interacting? It had to go over 2,000. There are times where you're interacting with a particular topic where 2,000 words is just not enough. And so if you're really on a roll and it's really well written paper, and it's impossible for you to have made the points you needed to make within 2,000 words, then I'm going to ask myself, okay, let's say you go to 2,600 words, and I'm going to ask myself, did they really need all extra 600 words to really make those points? In most cases, the answer is going to be no, but the answer may be like, okay, yeah, like they really needed an extra 300 or 400 words. So I'm not going to dock you a bunch. We may dock you 1 or 2%. But if you go to 2,600 words, and I'm thinking to myself, 800 of these words were just fluff and unnecessary, and they easily could have written this and made the exact same points in 1,800 words, and they just wasted 800 words, and they wasted my time. In that case, I'm going to dock you more. I'm going to dock you up to 10% of the paper. So anywhere from, if you go over 2,000, anywhere from 1% to 10%, I'm going to dock you based on, in my opinion, or the opinion of whoever's grading it, it's in their subjective opinion, was it necessary for you to go over? So if you're going to go over, make sure you're not wasting words. It's not a bunch of fluff. Like, make sure it's like, these are really good points. All right. And there's going to be times where it's like, you know what? You have to go over to make the point. And in that case, it's okay. And we won't dock you much, maybe just 1%. So that's kind of the word count there. Make sure you do that, if you stay within that, if you can. So there, you see here, it says, 1,500 words on a topic within the scope of the course. The paper must advance an argument. All right. So it's not just, it's not just, it's not just, talking about something, but you're taking an opinion and you're pushing it forward. You're advancing an argument. All right. It must have a clear, significant thesis. The paper's arguments, organization, and content must advance that thesis in a clear and cogent manner. All right. The paper must demonstrate that the student has effectively utilized critical thinking skills in his or her research. Right. The paper must use MLA formatting and include a works cited page. If you don't know how to use MLA formatting, you want to use a website. If you go to Populi, there's a link in the syllabus section for how to use MLA citations. Make sure you do that. Okay. And you want to make sure you have at least 8 scholarly sources. I'm going to show you what a scholarly source is in just a minute. So that's really, really important. If you don't have the right sources, we're going to dock points. If you cite someone, but you don't use the right sort of formatting, we're going to dock you a few points. All right. So that's really, really important. So that's what you're going to do. Make sure you have that. Let me talk a little bit about scholarly sources and what is a scholarly source, or what constitutes a scholarly source. A scholarly source is an article written by someone who has the proper formal education to actually make the statements that he or she is making. There are moments where someone has proven to be such an incredible expert on a particular topic without formal education that it is acceptable. But this person is extremely rare. This is a person that needs to be like just extremely widely regarded. So, for example, Augustine didn't have a PhD. Okay. PhDs didn't exist when Augustine lived in the 4th and 5th centuries. But he is clearly widely regarded, right? Charles Spurgeon, great preacher in the 1800s, right? There are others out there, people that are just, they're so widely renowned and so widely respected that of course they are considered scholars or experts, but those are extremely rare. Like, there's only just a few of those people really in every industry and every genre of theology and theological study, really throughout church history. And there's not many of those people in recent church history without theological education, right? Pretty much all the reformers in the 16th century and all of the Puritans of the 17th century, all of them had major quality formal education, right? Think about John Calvin and Jacob Arminius. They were trained as attorneys, as was Martin Luther. And those guys were trained as Catholic priests. And so like these guys had formal theological education in most cases. So you want to make sure you're finding articles from people that have theological education. Every single article that I have posted in Populi, if you go to the syllabus section, okay, in Populi, in the dashboard, you'll see all those links that I've posted. There's a bunch of them, and some of them I've never even mentioned in class or in the Populi lessons. There are things that we've talked about in class or topics, and I just pop a couple articles in there, and we never even go over them in class. But if you go through them, there's a ton of them on there, and I'm going to keep adding more over the next 2 weeks. There's going to be a few dozen at some point all of those are fair game. You could probably get all of your scholarly sources just from those articles because they are scholarly sources. So you're welcome to use those. Also, books from academic publishers. So let me show you what that means here. Let me pull up a paper that I wrote and pull up one of the bibliographies that I wrote for a class here. Okay, so this is a paper that I wrote for a class. So this is my bibliography. All right, you can see here. This is my bibliography for the class right here. All right, so these are the sources I use. You can see here. So this is a book that was written by B&H Publishing. All right, B&H Publishing has two sides. They have an academic side, and then they have what's called the trade side, kind of just like generic books for the general population. What you really want is books that are produced on the academic side. Okay, so when you look at the cover, when you look inside the book, when you're looking at the title page of a book and the copyright information, it'll say like B&H Academic or Baker Academic or Zondervan Academic, right? And then there's some any academic publisher that's from a university. So if it's Princeton Press, Yale Press, Oxford Press, you know, those sorts of things. I wrote a book a few years ago. And the imprint is owned by Abilene Christian University. It's an academic press, right? So they have an academic press. So you want books that are from academic press. You don't want books that are self-published. You don't want books that are from trade. I mean, really, even Zondervan in a lot of cases isn't as helpful unless the person writing it is an expert. So you really want academic source. If you're going to use books, ideally you want academic press. Those books they go through a much more rigorous process. They are vetted better than trade books are. So you want to use those are the kinds of books you want to be using when you're doing a scholarly paper like this, right? So Routledge is acceptable. You know, Baker Publishing Group, as long as it's from the Baker academic side, which this one is. So this is Rutgers University Press, right? North Carolina Press. This is a JSTOR article. I'll talk about that in a second. Harper One, these are actually not academic books. So I don't want to rely on these nearly as much, right? So for this paper, I was required to have at least 8 scholarly sources. Well, I've got more than 8 because these two basically don't count. And when I'm writing my book, when I'm writing my paper, I didn't rely nearly as much on these as I did for others. In fact, I actually relied on one of these a little more than I should have, and I actually got a few points taken off for this particular paper from my professor. But you see here, Oxford University Press, Yale University Press, right? So this is a Zondervan book, which we don't love Zondervan, but it's a book by Martin Lloyd-Jones. Martin Lloyd-Jones is a well-respected scholar when it comes to preaching, and the point I was making in the book was about preaching. In the paper, was about preaching. So that was acceptable, right? Since Martin Lloyd-Jones is an expert on preaching, widely respected, and is a scholar, then that's considered acceptable, right? And then again here, Douglas Sweeney, Baker books, that's an academic book, perfectly considered acceptable, right? So when you're writing, when you're having sources, you want to make sure you are using scholarly sources. You just want to make sure that it's reputable. There's a lot of books out there that are garbage. You can also use blog posts and YouTube videos for scholarly sources. Just make sure that the person is actually a scholar. Okay, make sure they have a PhD. Okay, and make sure that they are that whatever they're talking about is their expertise. Okay, and so if someone has a PhD in church history, you don't want to be quoting them on systematic theology. Okay. So you want to make sure that if you're quoting someone on something about theology, that the person has a PhD in systematic theology, right? Or biblical theology in some cases, right? You want to make sure that's helpful. Because you want to make sure that they are actually experts and proven to be scholars in whatever they're actually talking about. So you can use blogs, you can use YouTube videos, you can use podcasts. Those are all perfectly acceptable so long as the scholar in the medium, in the video or the episode, is indeed a scholar, right? Also, any book that is an author that is mentioned in the syllabus. Let me bring that up again. That's not what I wanted. Okay, I'm going to pull up the syllabus again for this class from a gender sexuality class. Right, so this is the syllabus right here for that class. Okay, I'm going to scroll all the way down here, and the bottom of the syllabus, at the end of the syllabus, this is the bibliography. These are the books that I use when I was putting together the content for the course. Okay, so everything I teach in class, for the most part, comes from one of these books. Okay, that's pretty much well, yeah, that's how you know. Um, in most cases, we do use videos and stuff that are outside of this, of course, some of my own personal experiences. But generally speaking, I'm trying to rely on scholarly sources, not just my own brain power and my own experiences, right? So here's all the things we're using for the different. These are all the different types of content, right? These are all the different ideas. So any of these books are fair game to be used in a paper because these are books that I've already vetted, that are people who are scholars. They're not all of them are on academic publishing houses, but all of these are from scholars that I've already vetted, right? So you're welcome to go ahead and pull from any one of these books if you were to find one of these. Some of you probably own some of these books already. This is a great book right here. I mentioned right here, the Preston Sprinkle book. Where is that at? People to Be Loved. I've talked about that in class. Is a great book. Owen Strand's book. Owen Strand's one of my professors. He wrote a book called Reenchanting Humanity, which is an unbelievable book that can be really helpful to you in some of these topics. Most of you probably own a copy of Systematic Theology by Wayne Grudem, or maybe some of you might. So these are all helpful books that could be helpful to you when you're looking for topics or you're looking for scholarly sources. Google Books is also a great way. You can go on Google Books and you can do a quick research and search for books. You can search for topics. So let's say you're doing a research topic on whether or not men are born gay. And you want to do that, or you want to go in the Google Books, you just go to google.com, look at their books section, type in men born gay or are men born gay, and it'll find that phrase or similar phrases in all the books they have in their library. And there are literally thousands of books, in tens of thousands, in the Google library. So you can find it. Sometimes Google will let you read the section of that book for free, or even a few pages of that, and you could read through it and skim through it, and you can determine, okay, this book probably has some good sourcing or some good information. You can then go ahead and then either buy that book on Google. Maybe you could buy it used cheap, or you can go to the library. I'll get you you can get it free on there are two different apps. I'll show you where you can get books from for free, or you can get a Kindle version, or sometimes some of the Google Books will let you get large chunks of the book free of charge, or download it free of charge, or get a PDF version of it. So there's different variations from Google Books. There's also a BGU digital library. There are dozens and dozens of books, maybe hundreds of books, maybe actually more than maybe it's even in the thousands of books. My number keeps going up. Sorry. But there's a bunch of books in the digital bookstore online in Populi. So you can do some research there and search for titles on topics, and then you can find those books in the BGU library. I've also been told that you should have several months ago or last semester, you should have taken a class called BGU Student Success. And in that class, they would have taught you how to use the BGU library for research. So I would encourage you to go ahead and do that. There are definitely books at the BGU library that you can get a hold of. There are three other sources that I want to introduce you to that I think could be extremely helpful to you when you're doing research. One of them, I'll pop this up here on the screen here. One of them is a thing called JSTOR. Let me pull that up here. Sorry, should have had this ready. Apologize. Okay, JSTOR. This is a phenomenal resource. Tragically, this is not something that's offered for free to BGU students. A lot of colleges have this built in. So when you go get your master's degree at another school, in a lot of cases, you'll have this. JSTOR is the largest and most common digital library in the world. A lot of colleges and universities, a lot of think tanks, a lot of research institutions, a lot of seminaries, they put papers and journals on this thing called JSTOR. And basically what JSTOR allows you to do is to research. So I'm a nerd. I read dissertations from people who are getting their PhDs. Basically, this allows you to research. And so you can do, there is a fee if you want to get a membership to this, but you can also register. As you can see, where's the registration? You can register. I don't know where the registration is. Okay, oops, here we go. Sorry, I should have had this ready. This is not good that I don't have this ready. I apologize. Okay, here we go. This is okay. So on the registration page right here, if you go to JSTOR, if you just go to like JSTOR /register, okay, like that. So it's JSTOR, JSTOR.org. You can register, and basically what JSTOR allows you to do is research, find other research papers that have already been written by other scholars or journals, and are scholarly articles that have been written. And JSTOR will allow you to register for free, and you can access up to 6 articles. Okay, so what you'll do is when you're using JSTOR, you'll do research, you'll do a search. It'll pull up dozens, if not hundreds of options. You could read a little excerpt of them. And so you can read the description, read the title, read who the author is, read a little mini excerpt of them, and you can make a determination whether or not you think that paper or that article could be helpful to you. So let me pop up here for a second. So let me log in the JSTOR. I'm going to log in. And so I can log in over here. So I've already got a option, a login, because my seminary, Midwestern, where I'm getting my doctorate degree, gives me they basically pay for all their students to have a subscription to this, which is amazing. And so I can go over here. I can then search, home. I can just go to resources, open content, and then I can search I can search for different things. So I can search, homosexuality. Obviously, lots of things are going to come up. Did I spell that right, or did I spell that wrong? Okay, so it's accessed all sorts of different. Did I type it in wrong? I can't spell. I'm sorry. Okay, homosexuality. There we go. All right. So I type this in right here. Open access books, and it gives me all these different. I mean, this is, of course, it's going to give me. Let's say I don't want book chapter. Let's say I just want journals. So these are scholarly articles written by various people. So here's the article: homosexuality as a consequence, sex, sin in the church, the dilemma of homosexuality, psychobiology and development of homosexuality. So basically, this is going to pull up 343 different journal articles. These are scholarly articles written for various journals that are produced usually by universities, major universities. Sometimes they're produced by research institutes or different think tanks that are producing journals or magazines. So these are articles from those types of places. So what you can do is you can sign up for a free account on JSTOR and just scroll through these. You can click on that one of these right here, and then it'll allow you in many cases to read an excerpt of it, and you can see who wrote it, what it's about, and you can determine, okay, this is from a Journal of Mormon Thought. Okay, this is probably by a Mormon. Okay, I probably don't want that one. But I can keep going through, and then eventually you can download. It allow you to get to up to 6 of them. The reason why journal articles are really, really helpful in research is because they tend to be very, very precise. Books tend to be more broad. Journal articles tend to be very, very specific. So they're really, really helpful when you're doing research. In addition to that, they're way easier to comb through. Like combing through an entire book or through an entire chapter is harder and takes more time than running through a journal article. So you should use journal articles like a lot. In fact, for those of you, if you go on to do more heavy research, if you go to get a graduate degree at some point, using research articles is really, really helpful. You should be reading journals and scholarly articles in journals on a regular basis. They are really, really helpful. I'm a nerd, so I read them regularly. There's several journals out there that I'm subscribed to. Most of them can be expensive sometimes, but they're really, really helpful when you're doing research, and you really want to learn about a topic. And so that's JSTOR. So I'd encourage you, if you're interested, go to JSTOR. It's JSTOR.com or .org, and then you can just go /register, and you can do research there. They have some tutorials. Make sure you just really read the website well, poke around the website so you understand how to use it well before you start researching. And then you can do some searches there, find some articles, some stuff that can be really helpful. It allows you up to 6, basically articles, free of charge when you're doing research. If you don't use it for this class, gender and sexuality, maybe you save it for a different class, right? Now, another technique some people do, this is a little bit shady, but they don't stop you from doing this. You could sign up for it, use 6 articles, and then, cancel your account and then sign up later with a different email account address. JSTOR knows people do it. They don't stop people from doing it. I've talked to people who are familiar with the JSTOR database and the staffing there. They don't stop you from doing it, but they kind of frown upon it. So it's one of those situations where it's like, well, if you desperately need to do it because you're in a really bind and you can't afford it, then it's kind of like, well, okay, fine, go ahead and do it. But they really, really frown upon it. So I'm just telling you what I've been told by some of the guys that I know people who manage the JSTOR database. So, yeah, it's not shady. It's not unethical. They give you the stink eye. So I would not encourage you to do that unless you're like in a really, really tight bind and you absolutely don't have any sources and you have to get more down the road. So again, that's an option you could that you could have on your radar. Okay, next thing, so that's JSTOR. Okay, two other things you can do to figure out options for resources. These are phenomenal options that I would encourage you to get to. There are two apps. Okay, can you see that? No, you probably can't. Okay, so there's two apps on the phone there. You see there? It says Hoopla and Overdrive. You probably can't read those well. Okay, you get the point. So there's two different apps that are free for the iPhone. One is called, and I'm pretty sure they're on Android too. One is called Overdrive. The other one is called Hoopla, Hoopla. Overdrive and Hoopla. They're free apps, but you can't access them unless you have a public library card, okay? So if you don't have a public library card, you need to get one. You probably should already have one by this point. You were encouraged to get one months ago. If you don't have them, go get one. Go down to Hennepin County Library and go get one. Once you have a public library card, okay, you can then use your library card and your identification number on that card to log into the Overdrive and the Hoopla apps. Basically, what Overdrive and Hoopla let you do is to check books out electronically free of charge. And in many cases, they have way more books on their electronic library than they do even at the physical library at the local library. So if you can go to the Hennepin County Library and do research there, or you can go to the app. So let's say you're doing research, you're just doing Google research, whether it's just a generic Google research or search on the Google search engine, or if you're in Google Books, or maybe you're on JSTOR and you see there's an author you want to do some research on, or maybe it's one of the books listed in the syllabus that I've given you here. You can go to Overdrive, you can type in that book and you can check that book out digitally, and it basically downloads it to your phone in the app. And in most cases, you can have it out for up to 3 weeks. So you can check out several books. I think depending on the library, I think depends on what type of library card it is. Excuse me. I was just burping there. I apologize. I've been drinking some Sprite Zero Sugar. So that's the reason why. I apologize. So you could use Hoopla or Overdrive to get books. In many cases, you get up to like 12 books for like 3 weeks, depending on the book. Now, some books are on back order or they're checked out by, they only let so many people at a time to have that book on their app. And so once it's on your app for 3 weeks, at the end of that 3 week, it expires and it deletes it from the app. But you can basically access it on your phone and you can scroll through it and you can research on your phone there. You can use the app. Now, I've heard some people say that you can also use Overdrive or Hoopla on your desktop computer or your laptop. Somehow, I've actually never done it, so I don't know. I just do it on my phone. I actually have like a little mini keyboard that my phone plugs into, and so I plug my phone into it, and I use the keyboard there, and I find stuff there. I can copy and paste from the app, and I can make notes in the app there, and then I usually do is copy and paste it from the app, and then I email it to myself from my phone. And then I go on my laptop and grab those notes off that email. And I've used that book that way. You can use your phone to kind of search different topics and read through in the app. So there's two different apps you can use. Again, it's Overdrive and Hoopla, and they allow you to access literally tens of thousands of books completely free of charge if you have a library card. So there's really no excuse to not have access to really good books. So if you're like, man, I really want to, you maybe check out some of the books that Kenny has in the bibliography, right? Like, so this is the bibliography, right? for the class, the course bibliography. Here is, here are the books that you can, that I think you can check out, and you can go and say, okay, which one of these seem the closest to what I'm wanting, right? What I'm trying to accomplish. These are all the types of books. And so if you want to know, hey, where's Kenny getting his information from? These are the books where I'm getting my information from when I'm teaching in class, right? It's not just stuff that I just pulled out of my own, brain, but I'm getting it from scholarly sources there. All right, so that's so hopefully that's helpful to you there. Okay, so I'm going through, really trying to go fast here. Got scholarly sources, check. I got a to-do list here of things to go over. Blogs, podcasts, books listed in syllabus, Google Books, BGU Library, JSTOR, Hoopla, Overdrive. Okay, couple quick things. Your paper should always be in third person. You should never say I. Okay, never, ever. You speak in third person. Okay, make sure it's really, really important. If you ever speak in first person, if you say we or our, anyway, even if you say something like, we evangelicals need to make it different. No, like evangelicals need, like you're speaking as if you are not a human. You are outside. Okay. You want to say, you don't want to say, I believe. You want to say, this paper will. And I'll show you some examples of that in just a second. You also want to make sure you have a lot of good quotes and citations in your paper. All right. So let me pull up an example of a couple papers that I have written recently. Okay. All right. I'm getting text messages over here. Okay. I'm not sure what's going on here. Okay, sorry, getting text messages. I apologize. Okay, let us go to, here we go. This is, okay. So this is a paper that I wrote not too long ago. This was a 4,100 word paper. This paper had to be between 4,000 and 5,000 words for a graduate course. I wrote this paper in January 2020. I got a 96 on this paper. And this paper is, and the average grade in the class was like 81, because it doesn't show me what my classmates got, but it shows me the range. So most people got between like a 71 and like a mid 80s. 81 was like the median. And so I got 96. So I don't say that to brag. I'm just making the point. This is a good paper you can glean from. And I'll put a couple of these papers in Populi for those of you who are students in my gender and sexuality class. That way you have a good idea as to what a good paper looks like. So, this is a title page. You don't have to do a title page like this. This paper is not an MLA, so do not use this formatting, okay? My school, Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, you see this is a school I go to. My school does not use MLA. We use what's called Turabian, or Terabian, some would call it, but it's Turabian. And so we want to make sure that you don't model the citations and format, okay? Use MLA. MLA has very specific formatting for title page. Make sure you use the MLA instructions, okay? It's really important. Do not use mine, all right? So this is my paper. My paper is on, this is the contributions, theology, practices, and trajectory of the Baptists in America during the Second Great Awakening, all right? So if you're not familiar, there's a series of revivals that took place in the 18th century, between the late 1730s and the early 1750s, known as the First Great Awakening. And then there was another set of revivals that started in the late 1790s and really went through the 18 teens, but then it really kind of exploded in the 1820s through the 1830s. And those revivals were all over the country in America, and those were known as the Second Great Awakening. So basically, my paper here, this 4,000 word paper, is specifically about Baptist people in America during the Second Great Awakening. All right. So it's very, very particular, as you can see. So I'm writing about the contributions, theology, practice, and the trajectory of the Baptists, right? Okay. So here's my paper right here. As you're going to see, I'm doing footnotes. Okay. You may not do footnotes. You may do works cited. That's acceptable in some MLA the MLA could allow you to do that. But you'll notice by the time at the end of the paper, I've got 75 citations. Okay. That's the kind of paper I want you to be writing, like that many citations. Okay. I got 75 citations. So here's the bibliography. Okay. Here's the the number of sources that I'm using for that right there. Okay. And I've cited these 75 times. Now you're going to have a much smaller paper. You're going to have a 2,000 word paper, or 1,500 to 2,000 words. So, but realistically, you should have probably between 35 and 55 citations in your paper. Okay. Maybe 30 to 60 in that range. That's what you should really have. It's hard to say. Basically in your paper, you should never make a statement that sounds like someone's opinion without citing whose opinion it is. And it should never be your opinion. It should always be the opinion of a scholar. Okay. It's really, really important when you're doing a research paper. It's really important to make sure you know that. If you say, gravity has been in existence from the beginning of the universe. Well, how do we know that for sure? Like that could be someone's opinion. So if you make that statement in a scientific paper, there should be a footnote or a parenthetical statement next to it citing some physicist who shares that opinion and has mentioned that type of opinion. You don't have to quote the person precisely, but the footnote should point to somewhere where they made a statement similar to the one you're making. All right. So when you're so let me give you an idea. Let me go through this paper right here. The first and second great awakenings were influential. I'm writing, this is my paper. This is a paper about the first and second great awakenings, right? The first and second great awakenings were influential religious events in American history. That's a statement that pretty much everyone agrees on. So I don't have to cite that there. But if you wanted to cite it, you could. Okay. The first great awakening was a series of powerful and unprecedented revivals. So this is a quote, right? So I've got a citation there, and this is from Thomas Kidd, right here, Thomas Kidd, and happens to be one of my professors, but he wrote it, and here's where he made that statement. Okay. I'm citing that there. Revivals in the 18th century. The second great awakening was a later set of revivals that mostly took place in the early portions of the 19th century. Again, here I'm writing things that are pretty much kind of everyone knows. It's not really opinion. These later revivals spread across the country from New England through the burnt over district of New York State and all the way to the Ohio River Valley and the Western frontier. The reason why I have a citation here is basically this is a statement of history, but it's using a term called the burnt over district. And this is kind of like a euphemism or a nickname. So I don't want to use that terminology without citing someone else who's a scholar who used that terminology. So here, as you see, my second footnote, Douglas Sweeney, who's a world-renowned scholar, used that terminology, burnt over district, here in his book, right? And here's the pages where he talks about that. So there's 10 pages. So I'm not quoting it, but it's like, basically, if you don't agree with what I just said here in these statements right here, you could go to Douglas Sweeney's book, read those 10 pages, and pretty much my 2 sentences here in this paper is basically a summary of those 10 pages from Douglas Sweeney's book. Okay. That's in essence what you're doing here. So when you are writing a research paper, you want to make sure that whenever you're making statements, that you are basically summarizing what a scholar has already said. So if you read like 2 pages from a scholarly book, you could basically summarize that in 1 sentence, right? And you want to then cite it. Okay. That's basically what you're trying to accomplish when you are writing a research paper. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense here. And then I wrote, there is continuity between them. Again, here's another one. Here's another one. You see, I'm 2 paragraphs in and I've already cited four times. You see how I've done that? On page 1, I've got 5 citations on the first page. Okay. It's really important. By the time I get to the end of page 2, I've already got 9 citations. All right. So I basically I'm 600 words in and I've got 9 citations. All right. Throughout my paper, I've got a lot more than that on a per capita basis, actually. So in the beginning. So that's what I want you doing. I want you quoting people, but not long quotes. You see what I did here in this paper where I've got, I've got this paper here, like mini quotes, but I'm basically giving you my opinion, right? The First Great Awakening was a series of powerful, unprecedented revivals. That's basically my opinion of what the First Great Awakening was, but I'm giving you a quote from a scholar that is backing up the opinion, and I'm quoting from it. So rather than maybe giving long quotes from scholars, what you really want is short, quick quotes from scholars, all throughout your paper. Now, it's okay to have long quotes as well, but that shouldn't be normal. What you want is kind of quick, punchy quotes, 1 or 2 words or just a phrase here or there, all throughout your paper, right? So you see here is, as historian Thomas Kidd has pointed out, there is no actual clear break between them. So Thomas Kidd, he's a scholar. His opinion is that there's not really a clear break between the First Great Awakening and the Second Great Awakening. The First Great Awakening kind of goes longer than people realize. The Second Great Awakening actually starts earlier than people realize, and they kind of bleed into each other quite a bit. The First Great Awakening kind of leads into the Second Great Awakening. Therefore, it's not clearly as much of a clear break. Is the point Thomas Kidd is making, and that's important in my paper when I'm talking about this. So that's why I am quoting it, right? But I'm not giving my opinion here. Okay, I'm giving Thomas Kidd's opinion, and Thomas Kidd has a PhD in American history and one of the most well-respected scholars on the First Great Awakening in the world. He's the world's greatest scholar, one of the greatest scholars on George Whitefield. He is the preeminent scholar on Benjamin Franklin. So his opinion clearly matters more than my opinion, right? Okay, so let me continue. So that's that gives you an idea. I'll keep going. Baptist background. You can see the Baptist movement here is another citation. The Baptist movement spread to the American colonies, and at first the movement seemed promising. However, momentum slowed. By 1700, there were only 24 Baptist churches in American colonies, right? So I'm basically making an opinion statement, and then I'm backing it up with a factual statement, right? So the Baptist movement spread to the American colonies, and at first the movement seemed promising. However, the momentum slowed. That's an opinion. How do I know that the momentum slowed? Well, by 1700, there were only 24 Baptist churches in American colonies, right? Earlier, before 1700, there were more Baptist churches, but the number went down. And where do I get this from? You see here, footnote number 7. This book right here called The Baptist Story is a scholarly textbook that talks about how there were basically, you see here, it says pages, 685 to 692. Basically, those are 7 pages in the Kindle of that textbook that basically says, explains the history of the Baptist movement in Britain and in the early 1600s and how it spread to America, and it started really fast and then it waned. So by the time you get to 1700, there's only 24 Baptist churches in the entire country, while there's hundreds and hundreds of Presbyterian and congregational churches throughout the colonies. And there's not Catholic, but there's Anglican churches in the mid-Atlantic states in 1700. And so you have that. So you have this idea. But again, I'm making these statements and then I'm backing it up. And how am I backing it up? If you go read where that comes from, that'll basically explain to you. And then it says, on the eve of the First Great Awakening, the Baptists in America were, as author Winthrop S. Hudson noted, right? So I'm basically going to give my opinion. My opinion is that the Baptists were a really small group, kind of on the ropes, right? They were struggling. But I'm not going to give you my opinion. I'm going to give you my opinion through the words through a scholar, right? So here's as you see on the screen there. On the eve of the First Great Awakening, the Baptists in America were, as author Winthrop S. Hudson noted, a small, undistinguished, and little noted religious group, right? So I am of the opinion that the Baptists were a very small, not very influential, almost ready to fade out group in the year 1700 in America. But I'm not going to give you my opinion. Okay, I'm going to give you the opinion of a scholar who knows what he's talking about, right? So that's basically what you're doing. You want to basically, here's all the opinions I want to give in a paper, but I don't want to ever give my opinion. I want to give the opinion of someone who agrees with me or that I agree with based on my research, okay? That's basically how you want to be crafting that. And again, I'm going all the way through this right here. I'm doing the same thing. Many people were converted to Christ in Baptist churches. There were reports of the Baptist resurgence. And again, you see here pretty much every sentence right here. I got 4 sentences in a row that all end with a citation, right? You see, okay, maybe let me make that screen bigger. Sorry, so you can see that. 4 sentences in a row here on this paper, on page 4 of this paper, all end in citations. Okay, and then actually 6 in a row. Right in a row right here. See this entire section, there's 6 sentences. All 6 of them end with a citation of some sort. Because every sentence I'm making a statement that I'm actually getting from a scholar somewhere in the world. Okay? It's really important to note. All right. So, and you see here are all the scholars that I'm quoting. Okay. Same here. Here's all the, so every page you see here on this page here, I accessed an article from JSTOR, right? Boom. You see that there. That's a JSTOR article that I found that was really helpful to me. Okay. These are all different books that I've quoted and I'm quoting here. So you get the picture. All right. So that's basically how to do citations. Let me quote that off. You're talking in third person, lots of quotes, lots of citations are really, really helpful. So that's pretty much the structure of a research paper and all kind of the do's and don'ts, so to speak. I'm going to end this video now in a moment. And in a different video, I'm going to talk specifically about thesis, and I'm going to talk about structure of or the flow of your paper, but I want to kind of do it in a different video to give you a chance to kind of break from here. Again, I'm here to serve you. If you need anything, feel free to shoot me an email. Hopefully this is helpful to you.